What's up, fellas and ladies? We've got an interesting match here today. Neblime versus Steven. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Two Australians? Two Protosses? Well, you're absolutely right. And we're starting off on near impact, so let's get to it. Neblime in the bottom right is going to be our Mint Protoss. And in the top left, we've got Steven, who appears to be our Alice Blue Protoss. So we are coming out swinging with good, accurate color guesses. I hope you guys appreciate that, because we got over 100 player colors that are possible within Cosmonarchy. So, I'm really going to be up on my game, on my A game these days, especially since I've released the floodgates, or released the hounds, lowered opened the floodgates, something like that, about the fact that we have even more with regards to the possible player colors. We were previously blacklisting certain player colors. Ironically, black was on that color list because it was just unreadable, and then I made some efforts to make it more readable, and now it's back in circulation, as you guys have no doubt seen if this is not your first Cosmonarchy cast, because yesterday I released one that had a dim gray color that might as well have been a black color. Looks like Steven has been 5-0ing Ayud and apparently 2-1ing him the other day or something. That's pretty impressive, just tuning into the chat a little bit here. And it looks like Steven will also be opening double lattice in PvP. So that's a very different strategy. I will say Steven is quickly becoming one of my most appreciated players after the events of the most recent couple of games that I've casted from him. Obviously, he really likes to go for his hilarious Warden shenanigans, where he tries to proxy people with them and do silly things, like on Serenity. He likes that top right corner or bottom left corner, depending on which spawn he isn't. And so, very interesting stuff there. Neblime is going to take the econ hit of Scribe Scouting, and he will see the double lattice. We'll see what he wants to do with it, as a Simulacrum will be the first unit. You can't attack that with your Scribe. You will just give him a free unit. So, absolutely just going to have to suck it up and take the fact that his econ is not going to recover with that Scribe pulling away. Now, let's see. I mean, Neblime's macro is pretty good. He's going to go Rogue Gallery as the backup here, going for a Dracodon. I feel like if you scout double lattice, you have the most robust number of options to go up against it. But that doesn't mean that I know what Steven thinks and what he knows and what he's planning as he's moving many a Simulacrum outside. Dracodons are a really good answer to Sims for one reason. You can take one shot at them to null their shields without proccing the very, very important Simulacrum passive. So if you attack them once, they will just straight up not split. They only split after the second hit. So that is the best option for alpha damaging them. But you can see they're tanky boys. They're pretty fast. They can still get away. And so that is going to be one set. And that shield did not regenerate all the way, so that's going to be yet another one that is going to split. And already, one sim has turned to 4. The split is going haywire. What do we got coming out of this? It's a Kabbalist. Great for one-shotting. He's going to pull the Scribes here. This is going to be an opportunity for Steven to get even more sims if his micro is good. But right now, he's just kind of focus firing individual targets, trying to ruin the worker count of his opponent. But he's already lost a lot of sims, and so it looks like he'll have to fall away. Neblime did lose a single Scribe, and his Kabbalist is out. It does feel like, as of right now, even though Steven has a big force of sims, it's not like he can wall the Kabbalist out of doing something, right? And so he is going to need to think about that. Did he see it? Did he catch it on the mini-map? I feel like maybe not, or on the actual map, I should say. Now the sims are being bullied back by the Dracodon. Some of them are very, very low. All right, so it looks like the Kabbalist is going to slink away. There are a couple of golems coming for the extra sustain and whatnot. These sims will be mopped up if Neblime cares to focus fire as he does. Yeah, that's going to be a wrap there. The golems are leaving house. This is allowing the Kabbalist to make it in, and it will one-shot a Scribe and then start to go absolutely nuclear. You can decollide it all you want, but eventually it will stop. Oh wait, actually Neblime got very, very close to losing it there. Nothing coming out of these lattices, by the way. So big opportunity here for the Kabbalist to get a lot more eco damage. You can see he pulls back. He still hasn't lost any health since his first round, and these sims are not going to be enough counter damage on the other side. They're kind of meandering forward. There's a Charlatan out as well. This one Kabbalist has killed 5 Scribes already, evening out the worker disadvantage that Neblime had after that pull to defend the sims. Well, he doesn't quite get the extra one-shot damage there, so his Kabbalist is pretty low. I think he'll be good for one more shot. There you go. Ends up getting one more. Maybe he can get another. The Warden is pretty close. Oh, man. Steven's struggling with that worker micro. His Golem's only now trudging back in an attempt to do something about this. A Clarion will detect. A Clarion is available very, very early on here for Steven, but he doesn't have the Vespene for it. Not quite going to be the option that he needed. Warden is up and ready. Has been swiped at least once by the Kabbalist in the middle of its construction, and now we've got Dracodons moving in. Does Neblime think he has enough for a kill single positron being made. There's one extra scribe swatted away. Golem's not body blocking. This looks like a winning position for Neblime, it must be said. You can see that this Golem now kind of body blocking and saying like, okay, if you want to go after my scribe, I'm going to bop you there. Now just kind of whapping. Positron kind of shoos it away. Not a great choice here. I would have preferred Servitors, personally. Charlatan here for the extra damage multiplication. The first Golem was on hold position. It does fall. This is a very hodgepodge set of units. Oh, that Kabbalist almost goes down. Yeah, the Golem does end up collapsing, and that has to be Jeej. Steven will drop the first game. Neblime has won. Honestly, that was close in the early game. That's pretty exciting and also very much ballsy. Like, Steven loves Kabbalists, so having Neblime beat him with one, it must be cathartic for everybody who's lost to Steven's Kabbalist to see him get hoisted by his own petard. We got game 2 coming up. That was Near Impact 2.0, and now we go to Old Scars 2.0. So that's pretty exciting. We've got Steven in the top right, and now he looks like the Mint Protoss, but is this actually Mint, or is this Emerald? Oh, it's Vine Green. Okay, I was just totally off on that one. Neblime in the bottom left is the Alice Blue. So they almost traded the colors. They traded, like, approximate shades, anyway. So we went from one Jujic map to another. Class 0 did change over semi-recently, so if you guys are looking for new 1v1 maps to test, you have a couple of options there. Neblime in the bottom left will be putting a gateway down, and Steven is going to follow suit. Not interested in the Lattice opener this time around, at least not versus Neblime, not back-to-back. Doesn't want to try his hand at that. Of course, I actually don't know how many games were played, if this is every game or if this is only a selection. Fine either way, of course. I think we are going to get to a point where we have actually a glut of replays. If anybody else out there wants to cast Cosmonarchy replays and you don't want to cast a game that I've already casted, there's a lot of replays that you can choose from that I haven't gotten to yet, and you know, maybe if I see somebody else cast it nicely, I won't get to it at all. I'll just let you take it all. That being said, we've got plenty of gateways coming. It's actually going to be a gate bonanza. Both players scouting across the middle of the map as well. And it looks like we have a little bit of this new tile that Jujic had requested I make a little while ago, the Abyss tile blended with the Sunken Ground. That is the idea, anyway, of this map, is that it basically adds a little bit more terrain shape to the exterior of the third base, which was previously very, very difficult to actually hold. I think one of the main reasons why is because there's so many different entrances to it. You can attack it from 3 different angles. But we'll get to that if we come to the point where we actually need to talk about a third base. I'd love a third base PvP. I'd love a macro PvP because you don't get to see those too often. So hopefully we can change our minds about the matchup. It is the least populous matchup, and so that's why I usually do enjoy jumping on Protoss mirrors. We saw a Terran mirror recently between Ramen and Dog, and then we also are, I guess we're not super flush with ZVZs, but they do happen, and they are pretty fun, and they have been featured probably more than PvPs at this point, so yeah, enjoy the more rare matchup for now. Although I do think that they played a little bit after this. I just don't think that those replays have been submitted yet. So we might have, maybe it'll overtake ZVZ, and then I'll be like, hey, Zerg players, why don't you, Jujic tile? Why don't you go ahead and actually play some games with each other, you know, and post the replays? Got a Drakadin and a Hierophant out here. Actually, a second Drakadin now for Steven. This scribe is suspiciously placed. I feel like maybe Neblime will be thinking about a proxy. If that was Steven's scribe, 100% proxy Stargate incoming. I just know it. I can feel it. I can smell it on him. Starcraft 2 sort of rubbing off, and he's like, yeah, I can do that, sure. Now, with that being said, one of the major factors, in my opinion, of the sort of PvP, shall we say, chaos, seems to be that, like, it feels like gateway spam into Gladius was, like, a really dominant strategy for a while. However, I am interested in seeing if the matchup shifts now that some new units have been added, the Clarion has shifted in, and that sort of thing. Steven has been fended off for now as Neblime charges forth. He's got a suite of Drakadin Ecclesiast. I feel like that was an anti-melee comp. Looks like Steven has a couple of his own Ecclesiasts. He's not quite able to deny the Scout in, and so the 3-gate versus the 3-gate, but don't worry, Neblime is getting brainier with a 4th gate. We'll see if he can out-macro, out-micro his opponent, because there is a Nexus coming, and it's about 60% of the way there. Steven will 100% be able to call that a victory if he can hold here. I think he's got the right composition of units. It's going to be a little bit hard for Neblime to strike true, but the focus fire needs to be on. When Ecclesiast goes down, that's just going to speed up the reinforcements here, but Well, he's done a lot of damage to Neblime's army, but he hasn't really focused any one unit down. He's got 0 kills to his name. In Cosmonarchy, you don't lose efficacy unless your name is Blackjack. You have no penalty to losing health, so you just need to actually finish the job on some of these units. And remember, Neblime now has more military production than his opponent. The Nexus finishes up. If we don't see static defense be erected around it, I think Steven will be on the outs. Starting to filter in some more Zealots. Another Fallen Ecclesiast just speeds things up. Remember, the Hierophant can be such a swing in these fights. It's already been tagging that one Zealot and preventing it from getting anywhere. And so it will fall. Unfortunately for Steven, he doesn't end up getting the attack speed buff from it. Not enough successive hits onto the Zealot. So that will be a wrap there, but otherwise he might have been able to try to stand and fight in that situation. The attack speed buff is no joke, but he's losing Ecclesiast count, right? So he doesn't have nearly as much sustain as that of his opponent, and his one Hierophant is kind of low on HP. If the Draconin count rises at all, I mean, admittedly, 2 of these are very low for Neblime, he could try to focus them down, but as of right now, well, if we can get that attack speed, we can get somewhere here, but Neblime, using his own ascension from the Ecclesiast fall, that should be enough for him. Oh, I don't know. I mean, they're kind of trading back and forth. As soon as the Zealots run out here, Steven has to fall back. What are the units that he's got in reserve? He's added 1 more Gateway and an Ardent, but neither are operational right now, and he might just get run over here at the 11th hour as more Zealots are rampaging in. Again, no static defense was erected. I think this was a misread from Steven. As he gets routed, his Hierophant falls, and that's the source of his attack speed. We've got 4 gates now, but only 3 blinking. The 4th one gets queued up. The workers need to get involved. Steven needs to know, I have the better eco if I can hold. But is that going to be true for long? And will he even be able to hold the Ecclesiast getting so much shield regen, targeting the piddling amount of damage that the Scribes are doing? And GG has to be called as Steven drops a second match. Well, Neblime has shown us, you know, the funny way to win a game is just to outmake the military of your opponent. So that will be a second round win for him. I think we can probably dare to say what's going on in Game 3 in one video, and then we'll have 2 more replays to cast in Part 2, so let's get to it. At least our Aussies are enjoying each other's company. They're still GLHFing. They're still talking about, you know, like things like, oh, who won versus Aoud more recently and stuff like that. Neblime is in the bottom right. He is our Alice Blue Protoss once again. And Steven, I'm having a hard time deciding. I think he might be our Tomato Protoss. Oh, but it was Scarlet. I always confuse those two. All right, so I haven't guessed correctly every single time, but I'm still in the majority of cases because I full guessed game 1, half guessed the last 2 games. So we're into it. We're into it. We'll see if I can be the hero that we need. And Steven, he needs to be our hero. He needs to post a dub and see where he can go. I would say, one of the things that Neblime did that I didn't really talk too much about in that last match, but I think was pretty instructive, is he kept his Scribe on the opponent's side of the map and re-scouted him to see his gateway count. And that was after the 4th gate had already been put down. Sure, he sees the Nexus coming, but he needs to know if there's any follow-up tech, and, you know, he needs to know what the state of the gateway count is. Steven now getting his 2nd gate faster than Neblime is picking up his 2nd production structure. That's already an interesting deviation here, but I suspect we'll see another gate. One of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is if you don't know what your opponent has, you can't really... You have to wonder what kinds of risks you're taking, right? And you might be taking a risk to go for something like a faster Nexus into an Ardent. I actually think the Nexus build would have been totally fine if Steven had just erected some matrices outside his front gate. He spent so much money on not just an extra gateway to catch up to Neblime's production, but also to get to the point where he had the Ardent Authority warping in. That's a lot of money after you've already spent a Nexus, you built a Nexus when your opponent went for a 4th gate. And I'm not saying Steven knew that the opponent went for the 4th gate and then didn't, just did a dunce move or anything. But that's one of the values that Neblime gets out of keeping his worker out there. You can see he's already doing it in this game as well. He's going to go for that information, and it will let him make a better strategic decision. Looks like this grass is still cliff advantage, by the way. Neblime is going to have some words to say about that if he notices. So Steven's Scribe will be caught by the Hierophant. Really hard to avoid that. Unfortunately for everybody back at home watching this, the attack speed enhanced Scribes do not mine faster, so that did not just give a cash injection to Neblime, but that would be kind of epic. And that was a feature I planned for the Antikythera version of Cosmonarchy, back when we were just going to call it Cosmonarchy Retail or whatever, is I had this idea that attack speed would dictate mining rate. And so, like, obviously you could do some kind of attack speed increase and that would, benefit your workers. But I don't know if I would still do that now, but that's just kind of a cute idea that I had. So we are going to see a third gate come to complement the lattice of Steven. As, once again, we've got this weird melange of tiles over here that Biddy B has chosen the high ground. So you get cliff advantage from being up here, by the way. That's like, it's not just vision block, right? So that's the weird part. So the third gate is nearly complete here for Steven. He's not going for the expansion. This scribe is within vision range of where the Nexus would be put. So again, Neblime sticking to his guns. The longer he sees no Nexus, the longer he's going to have to kind of bank up a sort of attack. Now, a Zealot is being sacrificed here. I don't really like this because you already know your opponent has a Hierophant. You know you cannot save that Zealot if it gets tagged, right? And so that feels like that's actually a non-trivial portion of the army that Steven is going to have. He's already putting down a Warden, actually 2 Wardens. I don't know if he has a sixth sense about the Stargate or not. We've got a Warden coming for Neblime as well, and that will be necessary to fend off the Vassals without having to pull the Hierophant away from its very important position in the front line. First Gladius is nearly complete as well, and we are going to see Steven just kind of camping the bridge for now. This little Biotic Bastion blocking a possible landing site here for an island expansion at the sort of, I guess you would call that the 4 o'clock. And its corresponding position at 10. Now here comes the move in the front gates as the scribes are starting to get heckled by that Vassal. The Gladius is going to be able to bank up quite a bit of power here. The Manifolds are providing a lot of armor penetration, which will be very important in clearing the Zealots. And honestly, I thought that Hierophant was going to tag the Gladius, but admittedly, there's not really any anti-air possibilities there. Looks like maybe 1 or 2 scribes died here. I only see 1 corpse right now, but that doesn't mean there's not another one hiding amidst all of the saturation that Neblime has. And now he's actually going to try to push out while the Gladius moves across. The Ecclesiasts might tack that. And that is actually going to slow down the reinforcements at the front line. Zealots moving in. That's going to be a dead Ecclesiast, not really able to speed anything up for Steven as it was already tagged by the Hierophant. Another case of the value being added there. He should try to split his Ecclesiasts and his Manifolds away from each other so they don't keep providing the bounce, but Steven just making a mad dash back home. He does have 3 Dracodons and 3 more coming. Dracodon Manifold is actually surprisingly good because of the fact that even though the Dracodons have high, like, pure damage, right, as some people call it, alpha damage, they have high damage. They don't care as much about armor, but making it so that everything deals, like, actually 15 damage or whatever, it's honestly not a bad thing in PvP. Like, you just do outdamage your opponent a lot. Now, looks to me like Neblime knows he can't break that position. His Gladiuses have been zoned away by the Dracodons. And, hey, Steven's actually fallen away with everything. He is going to be trying to hold his natural and drop it at the same time. Of course, the Nexus is nearly complete for Neblime, and he's adding a 3rd gate behind this. But there is a rotation here, a point, an inflection point where Steven is going to have more military forces. Whether he has more absolute military strength is another question entirely. There's still only 2 Gladiuses here. One of them has started back at home for Neblime. Not going to be here for some time. Now, the Hierophant needs to be a point of contention here. It is not being focused down by Neblime. Instead, he's trying to kill some of those Dracodons. There's so much more of those where necessary. The Nexus now being heckled, absorbing a lot of damage as the Zealots are being broken down. And sure, one of the Manifolds goes down, but absolutely a good position here for Steven to try to hold. And he comes out of that with more military in this area by a long shot. So back at home, we've got a 3rd Gladius, a 4th one nearly complete. Rogue Gallery coming as a reinforcement, as another bit of tech. The Scribe's still spotting over here, knows the Nexus is still there. Not that it would be canceled, but you know. Just more information. Matrix now on the way here at the choke. This is exactly what I thought maybe on Old Scars Steven would do, is put a Matrix down after your Nexus finishes, because you know you don't have the army advantage. Or at least you can intuit as such. Neblime did get a bit more of a full scout in, or at least he tried to with his Gladius. But I think he saw a 2-gate lattice. I don't know if he saw the 3rd gate, but he might just expect it at this point. What is the sort of move, the pivot point away from this position now is what I want to know. We're going to get to that very significant worker advantage for Neblime. Up by 7 workers. Not all of that is due to, well, I guess up by 6 workers. Steven is correcting me in real time. It's not entirely because the Nexus is faster, right? This is a case where, like, we see the Nexuses are idle, so Steven could definitely work a little bit on that. Neblime is very unforgiving, though, in that respect. He always builds workers, and sometimes that can actually be a thing you can download to defeat him, is know that he's not going to skip workers, generally speaking, to get some kind of military advantage. Although, you know, he's also a tricksy devil. He will 100% do something you don't expect, like 6 stockade in a playoffs match. That did happen in Ascension 7 way back when. So, We got 4 Gladiuses, hit squad. They will be able to run amok inside the main base here. It's just a matter of time. Will he be able to hold? He's got the Matrix. His Ecclesiast count is pretty good at 5. His Zealot count could see a little bit of an increase, but right now he's adding Vagrants and Ecclesiasts, actually. Steven needs to really be able to gut punch Neblime here, because he is going to 100% lose workers. He needs to just evacuate these workers immediately, let the Wardens do something about this situation, and focus fire. But what is his reaction? He loses 6 workers already, and that was in no time at all, right? So definitely going to need to do some damage over here. His very, very low numbers of frontline units are going to get gobbled up almost immediately. Hey, that's 1 Gladius down. If he focuses down the other one, there's going to be no bouncing at all. Where is the sustain here? It doesn't really look like Steven has much. He's floating a good amount of cash right now. Definitely needs to fall back. I think Idle Manifold is not a bad composition to try to clear out some of the Zealots, but right now the Ecclesiast count is so high for Neblime. And look at this, flanking him with those Gladiuses. Almost seems accidental. He's going to lose one of them to the Hierophant tag, but at this point, Steven Strider-focused army does need to fall away. And it looks like Neblime is going to make a total gut punch of his own, going straight in for Steven's natural. We don't have a pylon for him. We do have 1 pylon between these 2 Protoss players. It looks like only now is Neblime considering expanding his production and you know, around that area. But you'll note that he will not build any production structures in his natural under no circumstances. And it looks like actually a little bit of a mind game move here as Steven's army does dive in to try to heckle this base. There's more Matrixes and Wardens being put together. There aren't enough defenses here for Neblime to hold, so instead of pulling his army back, a losing proposition in his mind, there's a bunch of Striders in this worker line, and the workers are pulled for Steven. He's going to see if he can make a final stand over here, but it's not looking good for him. The Gladiuses are bouncing indiscriminately. They are not even close to being stopped. And look at this, the Matrixes are finishing and cleaning up as the workers occupied all the Striders. 1 Matrix will go down, but the rest of those forces are good and dead. Yeah, that is it for Steven. He has been 3-0'd at the beginning. Well, we have 2 more matches. Maybe our upstart Aussie Protoss can do something to Neblime. I did say earlier, he's one of my favorite players to watch now. He's quickly becoming that because he just has these unorthodox strategies. He needs to find his footing in the Protoss mirror, though. He's only so far fought against Arbuz, I think. And Arbuz is a legit player, too. But Neblime, he was 2nd place in the last World Championship, last big tourney we had. So definitely a different kind of player. Thanks for joining me for this little look at the mirrors. We'll be back for part 2 tomorrow. Subscribe if you're not already. Donate on our coffee page if you want to help support project development. We're getting pretty close to full steam ahead on the 4th race. Looking very, very forward to it. I'll see you guys soon.